Once again, on General Welfare Presents, I am Paul Glumaz, 44-year veteran of the political movement of Lyndon LaRouche. And today is the 25th of September, 2018. And today marks the second year in which Donald Trump has given addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations. Now, this occurred earlier today, and I had the opportunity to watch the entirety of his presentation. And I'm going to tell you right now that that presentation is a game changer. There were some things in that presentation that I didn't agree with, but that doesn't matter. What Donald Trump declared was the end of global governance by that name. Okay? And what he said, he gave, and at the end he gave a very impassioned plea. He said, rooted in our souls and cherished, we cherish independence above all. When we do, we will find new answers for cooperation and unfolding before us. We will find new passion for peacemaking rising within us. We will find new purpose, new resolve, and new spirit for working together. The future is patriotism, prosperity, and pride. So, for all people in all nations. Now, what's he saying? He's saying that no more regime change, no more global governance. He's saying this explicitly. Each and every nation has its own culture, its own tradition, its own history, its own associations, and they and only they have the right to determine what is for them. Okay, it's very important. And by relying on that orientation, we can begin to solve many problems. All right. He completely rejected the International Criminal Court, saying nobody, no institution has a right to stand above any nation. That includes the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. That includes everything. Number two, he also rejected the compact on that's now coming out of the United Nations on refugees or on migrants, saying no agreed upon institution has the right to dictate to any country. Rather, the migration situation will improve through strengthening the nation, not weakening the nation. The migration situation will improve by increasing the economic development of nations. Now, you have to understand what that means in the context of what we've been through. In the 1980s, late 80s, early 90s, George Bush announced that we need to make the world safe for the New World Order. In other words, George Bush announced, and this is in the context of the Desert Storm. And in 1999, then Prime Minister of Great Britain came to the United States, okay, and said, what's his name? Tony Blair said that we are we are at the end of the we are at the beginning of the end of the Westphalian period. And what do you mean by Westphalian period? He meant the sovereign nations. The Treaty of Westphalia in 1648 has been the basis for sovereign nations. The idea of non-interference in the affairs of nations, which is how the war of the 30 Years' War was resolved, and that's been the beginning of the period of sovereign nations. Begins with the Treaty of Westphalia. And Tony Blair was saying that we've come to the end of the Treaty of Westphalia. We need global governance, global intervention on corruption, global intervention on environment, global intervention on contraceptive and population control. This is what and this has been in the most of the UN bureaucracy has been oriented towards globalization, global governance, global governance. All these NAFTA is a regional governance. All these things, which supersede the nation state, have now been declared by Donald Trump to be an anathema to an enemy of the nation state, and only by promoting the true interests of the nation, only by promoting the sovereignty of a nation, can people be free. This is incredible. And when pushed on regime change, when pushed on, I mean, he said his thing on Iran wasn't that great, his thing on China wasn't that great, but that's not the point. The point is that he's not calling for regime change in Syria. He said the Syrian people will decide their future. The peoples of the region in the Middle East will decide their future. The United States will not decide their future. No international organization will decide the future of the Middle East, of what happens in the Middle East. This is very significant. This is huge. This is the end of the New World Order. This is the end of global governance. This is the end of the creation of all these globalist institutions and that have been going on, increasingly, as the world was increasingly coming under the domination of an offshore financial system. This is the end of that. And Trump announced it today. Amazing. Now, the media will spin it one way, they'll spin it another. Oh, he's just a fascist, nationalist, patriot. He's encouraging fascism all over the world. He's encouraging tyrants who are promoting nationalism because their people are upset about austerity or something like that, which is necessary, or their people are unwilling to go along with our program, and therefore populism is on the rise, and all these people like Orban of Austria, and Putin of Russia, and Xi Jinping of China, and Duterte of the Philippines, and Salvini of Italy, they're all tyrants because they are populists and they are against global governance. That's what Trump is indicating now that he's against. Oh, he is a bad guy. So that's very interesting. And it's very profound that this has happened. And you are witnessing this happening today. And so this then brings me to the question of what's going on with the Justice Department. And what's going on with the declassification process. This is very interesting because because the declassification process hits at the core of the secret government. So that's what I want to get into a little bit right now, is the issue of the secret government. People used to call it the secret government. Now, why is it the secret government? Because there is activity going on in the government that is secret. And you're not supposed to know about it. Okay? That's why it's a secret government. So how does this work? In 1978, a very important law was passed dealing with, of course, national security. Everything that's totalitarian in the United States, that's secret control, is all done under the excuse of national security. So back in 1978, a law was enacted which established something called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which grants the government the power to surveil its own citizens on the basis of the possibility that they may be acting on behalf of a foreign power. Since this is a profound violation of one's civil liberties, and because the government's not supposed to be able to surveil, or any law enforcement agency is not supposed to surveil without a warrant. They have to have a reason to surveil. So they created the FISA court, a secret court with secret judges, and then warrants are issued by the Justice Department, but under the national security, for surveillance. Surveillance of who? Citizens. So, according to Wikipedia, and I don't know why I got these figures, from 1978 to 2006, in Wikipedia, there were close to 23,000 warrants, of which only 5 were refused. That means that's not 1% refused. That's like 0.01% refused. Okay, so what does that mean? Now, why don't I know how many warrants? How come Wikipedia doesn't talk about the warrants from 2006 to 2018? How many there were? Because they're probably not published. That's probably why. Of course, I don't know that. So they don't publish. They just published a number back then. Well, they're probably not doing that now. So that means that the government can get a warrant on anybody to surveil anybody on the basis that they might have some contact connection, possibly with a foreign. Okay, so that's one thing. Then in 1981, an executive order was signed called Executive Order 12333 and 12334. And this executive order, was under the other was under the national security. Okay. And again, this was dealing with national security. And this opened up the door for privatizing intelligence and privatizing this whole thing. So in other words, you could enlist the aid in intelligence to a private entity. In other words, before that, I think you couldn't do that. The CIA and all these other agencies had to function as you know, they had to function with their own personnel. They couldn't like farm out stuff to other organizations. And this led to the creation of quangos, which Oliver North was very famous for. You know, quasi-government organizations, right, that are like somewhere in between. And then this went off the reservation. This was the Iran-Contra business. Now, if you put the two of them together, the ability to surveil and the ability to deploy other organizations and privatize a lot of the intelligence, it means that you now have an interface between the private sector and the intelligence sector. Now, Lyndon LaRouche and his movement were targeted on the basis of Executive Order 12333 and 12334. And the way it worked was that the allegation was that LaRouche was a Soviet asset. The LaRouche movement were working for the Soviet Union, and that then triggered the investigation. So the intelligence community and the Justice Department were involved in investigating Lyndon LaRouche. And what they were able to do by surveillance is they were able to find the weak spots. They were able to find how they could go after LaRouche. Okay, how to proceed. The other thing that they can do under this arrangement is they can go ahead and like the FBI could go to a senator or a congressman or whatever, and the Justice Department, or they could go to another country like Germany or France or whatever, and Lyndon LaRouche is a bad guy. He's involved in this, he's involved in that. And it could be a total lie. Or they could go to a senator or a congressman or somebody that, let's say, is interested in LaRouche's ideas or policies. And they can tell him, look, he's a bad guy. We can't tell you why, because we have to protect our sources. But he's a bad guy, trust us. Or they can make allegations. They can lie. Just like the Christopher Steele dossier. They can lie. They can make something up. It's secret. It's confidential. No one's going to know whether it's the truth or not. And through both of these things, allegations can be made under the cover of secrecy, and the people making the allegations can be protected, and an entire environment can be poisoned. So this is how it worked. Now, I think Trump probably was also I think that probably Executive Order 12333 was probably activated with Trump, but they used the FISA court to do the surveillance. But here you have Christopher Steele, totally embedded with the U.S. Justice Department, and now it turns out he's still active with the MI6. He's still working for the government through his private firm, in which a lot of these people who work for that firm, which takes in $200 million a year, which is huge, are all the proteges of the old man of British intelligence, MI6 chief, retired Richard Dearlove. But they're totally, it's all one thing. It's all interconnected. It's all one thing. And then you have the Obama administration totally connected in with that, and bringing in all these people who are part of this global connection system. And what's the issue for these people? The system. The global international financial system centered in London, including Wall Street, and the offshore secrecy jurisdictions, and $55 to $100 trillion worth of assets, on top of which you have the whole derivatives and everything else. That's the system. And it's the petrodollar based system. It's the system of the offshore dollar. That's the governing system. And that's what they're protecting. And when Comey leaves office in 2005, he becomes on the board of directors of Dope Incorporated, Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, HSBC, right, on the board of directors. And then he comes back as FBI director after Mueller. Mueller goes from, once he, as FBI director, goes into the private sector working for the financial system. And he got in 2011, Mueller did. 2001, not a week or two after 9/11. And his predecessor at the FBI, Louis Freeh, leaves the FBI right after 9/11. Comey comes in. And who does Louis Freeh go work for? Saudi Arabia. He becomes a main, highly paid legal expert for Saudi Arabia to protect Saudi Arabia from the fallout of 9/11. Do you see a pattern here? It's they're protecting the system. The Saudis, the British, the international financial system. That's what they're there for. Okay, they're protecting the system. And so after 9/11, you had the increase of the surveillance powers. And now it's not just the U.S. It extends globally. The same system. The same U.S. Justice Department is coordinating the surveillance and setup of Cristina Kirchner in Argentina, Lula in Brazil. It's all one group. It extends into Brazil. It extends into Argentina. It extends all over the world. Angela Merkel's cell phone was, as we found out from Snowden. Snowden revealed a lot of stuff about how all this works. But it's legal under FISA. And, it's not legal, but the mechanisms exist there to hide it. And no president has ever declassified anything related to FISA. Okay? Or any of this. And what's happening is the foundations are shaking in the intelligence community, in the Justice Department, in the whole system. Because the president has the power to declassify. And they're asking the president not to declassify. They're threatening the president if he declassifies. And the president, a week and 1 day ago, said he would declassify. And then what happened? You had a meeting just prior to that with Rosenstein. Now, Rosenstein is the deputy director of the Justice Department. He is running the Russia probe because the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, recused himself. And Jeff Sessions is nowhere to be seen on any of this. So Rosenstein is in essence running the show. Now, Rosenstein was involved in signing off as a Justice Department official on the surveillance, FISA surveillance, on the warrant, on submitting the warrant to the FISA court. Number one. Number two, he then writes a memo recommending or implying a recommendation that Donald Trump needs to fire Comey. As soon as Donald Trump fires Comey, then Rosenstein appoints Mueller as a special counsel to investigate the Russia business. And the primary part of the investigation, or one of the primary parts of the investigation, is that the firing of James Comey was an act of obstruction of justice. So the guy recommending the firing of Comey is setting up the obstruction of justice charge. Now, so a few days ago, we heard in the media that Rosenstein had resigned. But he hasn't resigned. What has happened is that Rosenstein allegedly gave a verbal resignation to Kelly. But his resignation was not accepted by the president if that was the case. So what the president has done is, and both Australia and Great Britain are vehemently asking Trump not to declassify. So what the president has done is directed the Inspector General in the Justice Department to look into all of this, which is a way of telling which is a way of seeing if the Justice Department will take on this problem or not. If not, then he can still declassify. So meanwhile, everybody's hanging. This is a wonderful situation potentially. All the trees in the forest can fall. Because what this whole declassification will reveal is the inner workings of the secret government and their very close relationship to the British. And Joseph DeGenova, the former district attorney for Washington, D.C. back in the 80s, came on and said, the British are at the center of this whole Russia thing. The British are at the center of the whole operation against Trump.